If you've been on the internet trying to learn about fashion and personal style, you may have heard of the so-called Kibbe body types. In the last couple of years, the system that was originally invented by David Kibbe in the 80s went pretty viral. A lot of people were asking themselves if we wear flamboyant naturals or dramatic classics, if we have width or curve, for example. Recently, in January 2025, Kibbe released his new book, The Power of Style, in which he translates his old concepts into the current age. Besides that, he makes clear that actually there is no such thing at all as Kibbe body types. Sounds confusing? Let's unpack this. First, a short disclaimer. There has been a lot of debate about David Kibbe and his system, and honestly, there has been also a kind of an imbalance between people being very fascinated about his ideas and talking about him online versus David Kibbe really showing his own point of view. I know since I'm not David Kibbe himself, I can only add to this imbalance. However, I really try to do my best to do his system justice. Nonetheless, if you're really interested in learning about David Kibbe and his work, I think there's actually no better place than directly listening to him by, for example, reading his new book or listening to a few interviews he gave. Now back to the body types that are no body types. It might seem a little confusing at first, but David Kibbe emphasizes that this is quite an important detail for him. His whole concept is based on what he calls love-based beauty. He created 10 image identities that should in fact be an antidote to the old body types. I assume you have already come across body type system like the fruit system that makes you wonder if you are a rectangle or a pear, for example. Systems of this kind are all based on the idea that there is an ideal female body. In most cases, it is presented as the hourglass shape. However, for all other body types, clothing recommendations have been based on balancing out their so-called flaws to create the false impression of an hourglass. The idea of looking at yourself, searching for problem zones, and trying to hide them is deeply connected to body types. And it is everything but empowering. So, David Kibbe's system, on the other hand, was created to offer a guide towards self-acceptance instead. And in fact, I heard a lot of women online talking about how his image identity system helped them seeing beauty not just in one, but in many different shapes, forms, and bodies. Long story short, this is why David Kibbe created a system of image identities and not body types. He clarifies typing for him is a short term for stereotyping. And while we should not aim for following a preconceived guideline that leads to a certain path, but instead feel encouraged to create a style that is true to us as individuals. But how to find your ID then? Interestingly, Kibbe suggests not starting your style journey by trying to figure out what your image identity is. Instead, he created a series of exercises that guide you to look inward first. These exercises help you to become aware of your own preconceptions around beauty and style. He believes that understanding and questioning these preconceptions is crucial before you look at your body at all. Only after working through these internal barriers does he introduce the concept of image identities, ensuring you approach yourself from a place of self-acceptance rather than self-criticism. He claims the only way to find your image identity is to follow the steps or games he presented in his book. Eventually, he explains a specific line drawing exercise that will lead to your ID. According to him, your image identity will not be visible on your body itself, but is defined on how fabric shapes around it. I won't get into too much detail here, out of respect for his work, because he emphasizes a lot that it's important to look inward first before trying to find your ID. So, if line drawing is the only way Kibbe recommends nowadays, what about all the online tests? In his new book, Kibbe eventually states that all those online tests and quizzes that analyze individual features separately are fundamentally flawed and not recommended for finding your image identity. You cannot add simply characteristics like long hands plus sharp nose plus wide shoulders to determine your image identity. Kibbe claims that in tests you can only give answers based on the knowledge you already have, so you would need to know the result before even starting. You might say, but wait a second, I want to know which ID I have to find out which clothes he recommends me to buy. Well, there's actually another adjustment Kibbe made in his new book compared to the guidelines in Metamorphosis. He erased the specific clothing recommendations for each image identity nearly completely. What might seem shocking for some was his way of giving people the most freedom possible. Instead of creating boxes they had to put themselves into. He doesn't want people to think they can only wear a certain neckline or use specific fabrics, for example. Instead, it is all about your head-to-toe look and how your complete outfit harmonizes with your personal line. Your personal line is the result of your line drawing and what eventually will lead to your image identity. Let's look at this in simple terms and make this a little more practical. For instance, if we look at the dramatic image identity, the two important keywords that guide the silhouette would be vertical and narrow. Instead of looking at individual pieces and asking yourself, could these pants suit a dramatic? The idea is to ask yourself, could I create a full head-to-toe outfit with these that is able to honor a narrow vertical line? So it is basically all about looking at the whole picture and how you make an item work for you in a specific outfit. In an interview with the incredible Gabrielle Arruda, Kibbe emphasizes clothing pieces don't have an image identity. Only people have identities, which really stuck with me. It is all about how you make an item work for you in a specific outfit. However, does this feel a little unsatisfying to you? To be honest, to me it did at first. Kibbe's new approach seems to be all about giving you as much freedom as possible, and while that sounds good in theory, I was longing for a few more answers. So I decided to listen to a few interviews he gave and try to understand his way of thinking a little better, and then I realized, well, maybe he isn't that wrong at all. Maybe a style system cannot provide me all the answers I was looking for. It's tempting to look into a book or a blog that tells you you're XYZ, so you should only wear these necklines and these colors and then you're good to go. It's a longing for getting a shortcut to a personal style. But how personal is such a style in the end really? If you're focusing so much on systems that you rather question if an outfit is aligned with certain guidelines rather than how it makes you feel, isn't that also an insecurity-based style rather than one that comes from your sense of self? Isn't expecting to receive all the answers from the outside an act of giving your power away? A way of saying indirectly, please give me a system that makes judgments for me because I don't trust my own judgment enough? I'm scared I could do it wrong? Well, in style, as in any art, there is actually no right or wrong. There's only how you decide to express yourself, and if you let that expression be guided by fear or by a sense of peace, or in Kibbe terms, love. By this, I am not saying leave all your style tools behind. I certainly won't do that myself. However, I personally want to try to find a balance between external and internal voices when deciding what defines my style. I find pleasure in learning how visual harmony is created, but I also want to connect more with what resonates with me personally. I want to judge less and find a connection between logical thinking about style and the way it makes me feel. Surprisingly, that was the main insight I got from reading Kibbe's new book. It was certainly not the one I expected. How do you feel about the new Kibbe approach? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. Also, if you liked this video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, stay curious.